My prison ghost stories. So, I have had several supernatural experiences and figured I would share some that have stood out. I worked as an officer at a prison, and although I have moved on to a new facility, I have been an officer for the past 12 years. One of the major skills I have learned is how to retain and recall details, which helps recount events I witness. This makes report writing much easier and is helping me recount these events here. The prison I worked at was the oldest operational in my state and was built in the 1870s, in an old style with a big brick wall that runs the prison's perimeter. The place has been updated over the years, but some areas that still operated had little done to them since it was built. When I started, the old heads told all of us that the place was haunted given everyone who had died over the years. Different places more than others, like the old unit that was a segregation, or what some people might know as the hole, with all the prison graffiti. I never gave it much thought because if I do not experience it, then it is just a cool story but not confirmed. First experience. I worked there for 8 months when I first saw something strange. I was working overtime at night on what's called a one-on-one, where you have to watch a prisoner who is feeling suicidal and make sure he doesn't kill himself. It meant that I needed to stay up all night and check to make sure the prisoner was breathing every 15 minutes, and I had a partner who walked by every 28 minutes, so I knew I was awake. It was about 2 a.m. and I had just used my flashlight to illuminate the cell of the prisoner I was watching and confirm that he was breathing. I looked down to mark the check on my clipboard and I saw movement out of the corner of my eyes. My partner had just done his round 15 minutes prior, and all the prisoners were supposed to be locked in their cells, so there shouldn't be any movement down there. I turn and see someone doing a round on the housing unit, but he isn't right. This guy is wearing a blue uniform with a Breton cap, shiny black leather belt, and has a baton in his hand. The problem is that these uniforms haven't been used by my department since the 1950s, and our uniforms are not blue, they are gray and modern, whereas this one was old. I watched this guy walk down the unit for maybe 5 seconds, and then I shook my head and slapped my face to make sure I was awake. When I looked back, there was not anyone there. Second experience. This one happened roughly 2 years later during my normal shift. The central building of the prison I worked in is a big room called a rotunda. It has 2 floors, but is open so you can see the balcony up on the top levels, and anyone who is leaving the rotunda can be seen from the opposite side, even on the balcony. The doors into the wings that branch off of the balcony all have windows, and most of the rooms directly connected have windows also. It was maybe 2100 and I was going to the rotunda to complete some paperwork with a coworker from my sergeant, which is common. As we were opening the open barred gate to go into the rotunda, I looked up and noticed that the administrative wing lights appeared to be dimmed through the window in the door. I commented to my coworker that we would need to report that a light was out in the administrative wing. It was then, as we were both looking at the window, that we observed something move in the window, and we realized that this was not a light malfunction. A shadow person was standing in front of the window. While we were watching the shadow move to its left and through a solid wall into another room, we saw its silhouette through the window of that room. We just looked at each other and kept going. Third experience. I was about 3 years in as an officer by the point this one happened. I was working the third shift in the control center, which is where we use the cameras and security measures. Also, there are several rifle posts around the prison's perimeter that are used to ensure the security of the prison, but we only ever used 3 of them during operational hours. In this case, it's important you know that when a phone is left off the hook, the phone rings into the control center so that we can address the issue. When the call rings through, you can pick up the phone and hear anything on the other end that may be being said in the area, which is important in case we are dealing with a staff assault or a hostage situation. So, I am working as the electronic monitoring officer, which means the camera controls are my main responsibility along with the perimeter security. As I am working, the phone rings and the institutional caller ID says 1 post, which is odd because that post is not used because it is too small for a modern person to comfortably fit inside it. Also at this time, there is nobody that should be near it, and for someone to reach it would have set off at least 2 security alarms, which I was in charge of monitoring. Given the fact that the guy who was doing the perimeter checks was a bit of a prankster, I figured it was just him playing a prank and that he knew a way around the sensors. So, I answer the phone and all I hear is static, which is continuously increasing and decreasing in volume, like someone has an old television on a static-filled channel and is moving the volume up and down constantly. I hang up the phone and move the camera to look at the post, and I can see right inside there is not anyone there. As I am looking at it, the phone rings again as an off the hook at one post. This time my lieutenant picks up the phone and after a minute walks back to me asking if the perimeter officer is playing games because he can hear mumbling blurred out by static from the one post phone. He sees that I have the camera pointed right at it and that there is no one there. The lieutenant tells me to have the perimeter officer check it because an animal may have gotten in the post and knocked the phone off the hook. The officer took a while to get there as he had been on the other side of the perimeter and he had to climb 5 flights of stairs to get there. During this time the phone has continued to ring from one post until I can see the officer opening the door, at which point the phone stops ringing. The officer opens the door with his flashlight on and calls over the radio that there is not a phone in the post. My lieutenant responds that there must be one because the calls keep coming through. In response, the officer holds up a disconnected phone line so that the camera can see it and says that that is the only thing in the post. This post has not been used since the early 80s. Like I said, it was too small of a space. The phone would still ring now and again on the third shift until we updated our phone system to an internet-based system. Fourth experience. I had been an officer for about 4 years at this point. I was working my regular shift as the electronic monitoring officer. I went on a restroom break, which means I had to leave my post and go about 100 yards away to the nearest restroom. As I am in the restroom, I distinctively hear the sound of boots clapping on the tile floor of the hallway that leads to this restroom among other rooms in that wing. As the sound gets closer to the restroom, I can hear the large Folger keys that are clinking together on their waist as they walk. When it sounded like they were right outside the door, I called out saying, "I will be out in a minute." And I didn't hear the sounds after I said that. Thinking someone was waiting outside, I hurried up and washed my hands, not taking more than a few minutes. I opened the door and there was no one there. The hallway is long enough and has 3 entry doors that I would have heard open and close, as well as any other door in the hallway, to where they would have had issues getting out of the hallway noiselessly in the time between me calling to them and leaving the restroom. I returned to my post and asked my sergeant if he saw anyone go into the wing while I was down there. He said he didn't and asked why. Knowing that he was someone who believed in ghosts, given that he and I had talked about how he used to do independent paranormal investigations, I told him what happened. His face went slack and his eyes got large as he said, "Go check the video." I returned to my position and watched the video of that hallway, the hallway of the wing above that one, and the areas outside the wing. No one was in that area during that time except for me, and no signs of distortions. Fifth experience. I had been an officer for about 6 years and was working my regular shift. I was watching the medication lines after the dinner lines were done, and my sergeant was talking with me. Not like a management thing, we were friends and just wanted to have a conversation while ensuring that prisoners weren't passing meds, fighting, or worse. The medical hallway I was watching is connected at one end to the rotunda and at the other end to one of the main housing blocks. Specifically, right next to our main segregation unit. As we were talking, we heard what sounded like muffled talking from a radio. Checking our radio, we realized that it was not us. We began searching the area around us. Given the location, there shouldn't be an unattended radio, so it was a security issue and of some concern. As we proceeded to search the area, we realized that the intercom system speaker for the segregation unit was making the sounds. This intercom, unlike a standard housing unit, is not used frequently, which is why we were surprised to find it transmitting sound. The sergeant points at it and says it must be broken, the switch is in the off position and the activation light is off. I looked closely and got goosebumps as I made a shocking discovery saying, "Sarge, how is it doing that when it's not plugged in?" I held up the unplugged cord leading out of the intercom box and gave it a slight tug to show it was attached directly to the box. The sergeant's face went white and he walked off shaking his head saying, "Nope, nope, nope. These intercoms don't have backup batteries and there are no direct power hookups, just the cord that I had already shown was disconnected." The sounds continued for the duration of the medication lines. I left the area after that and I never heard of it doing that again. Next story. I am pretty sure the jail I work for is haunted. Me and a couple of coworkers were in our mess having our lunch and somehow ended up on the subject of creepy things, and they've had experiences I would say are far worse than my own. This experience is from November of 2018. I had been working at this facility for 2 years at the time. For context, I'll try to describe what our floor looks like in the jail. There is an elevator bay with a big metal door that is controlled by motor and chain. This is what we call main or main slider. All traffic comes into the floor from this door. You go down a small passage and then you're in a space that is the shape of a square with a smaller square room inside called the cube, which is surrounded by 7 pods for inmates. Each pod has 12 cells and can fit 2 inmates. The cube is used for controlling doors, and basically is an office space where paperwork can be filled out, and where you can sit and watch the pods during your shift. I'm assigned night shift on a floor of non-violent inmates. Gen Pop. Typical inmate you'd find on this floor would be drug users, dealers, petty theft, and the occasional drunkard kinda deal. I was working this floor by myself and the night was starting off as usual. I show up, lock down all pods for the night, conduct my head count, and go back to the cube. An hour later I conduct my hourly block check. Everyone's asleep or just chilling, so I return to the cube. Not the second I finish sitting down I hear the sound of someone kicking a cell door. I get up, I start flashing my light through the pods and eventually narrow it down to be pod 6 cell. One inmate is frantic, screaming that his cellmate is coughing up blood and is shaking. I open the door, remove the inmate, and see that his cellmate is foaming from his mouth and is performing what is known as agonal breathing. Essentially, we are listening to him take his final breaths. Long story short, medical gets called, and he is eventually taken to the hospital, but he doesn't make it to the hospital and declared dead en route. Come to find out, the inmate had swallowed heroin before he was booked and one of the packages ruptured while he was in the jail. It was unfortunate, yes, but it's not the first time it's happened and surely won't be the last. I file my paperwork and continue about life as normal. As another thing for context, we have cameras in the individual cell blocks and cells. We went back and watched the footage of the incident to confirm there wasn't any kind of assault or general roughhousing that would have caused the packages to rupture. The next night, I'm assigned the same floor. Similar process comes and goes. Show up, lock down the pods, conduct count, etc. Hour goes by, I do my standard check, go back to the cube. Again, as I go to sit, I hear 3 loud bangs coming from what sounds like B pod again. I go and I flash my light. Everyone is sleeping or chilling. I return to the cube, 3 more bangs. This time I refer to my touch screen to see if the kicking is tripping the lock sensor in the door. Sure enough, B pod 6 cell is showing that it is being messed with. The cell was still locked down due to the events of the night before, so no inmate should have been in the cell. I go to the cell, open it, and double check to make sure nothing and no one is in the cell. No one is in the cell. My next thought is that the lock is malfunctioning. I exit the cell and walk to the cube to call for maintenance, and as I'm on the phone the door slams shut, which sends me back out to look. At this point I am at a loss for words and have no clue what to do. All the inmates of the pod are also trying to figure out what is going on in their pod. I am trying to answer their questions, but genuinely I have no clue what to tell them. It eventually goes quiet. Maintenance arrives. I have him check the lock. Nothing in terms of it being a mechanical malfunction. After that night, I asked my watch supervisor to be placed on a different floor, which at the time we had just got a new batch of rookies, and so he gave me my choice of the floors. I've been on my new floor for a little over 2 years now, and I still have things happen that I can't explain, such as audible footsteps from around the cube, the occasional tapping on the glass of the door to the cube, but nothing as drastic as that night in 2018. Next story. Things I can't explain. So I'm using a throwaway here for obvious reasons, but I'm a CO in the Deep South and I just entered my 7th year working in my facility. I've always been semi-religious, but nothing serious, just your typical small-town church kind of thing. However, I work in a big city jail, and I've had some minor things happen over the years that didn't really make me think ghosts. But it's creepy nonetheless, especially working overnights, 20 to 6 o'clock. It's dark, silent, you're alone most of the time, plus you're usually a little drowsy, so I always chalked it up to that. Some of these small experiences include random footsteps from around my control room when all inmates are locked down, voices in places that are no longer in use. However, this isn't about any of those minor experiences I just mentioned, it's about this encounter/experience from around a week ago. I've talked to a couple of close friends, and some guys at work, and we can't seem to figure it out, and I've tried to wrap my mind around this best I can, but I'm honestly at my wit's end. So might as well post it on the internet and see what sticks, or if someone can perhaps help me reason with whatever happened. So for context, the floor I work is typically a floor reserved for mid-security violent inmates. This would include robbery suspects, domestic violence, assault, etc. Typical night for me is to come in and lock down all inmates for the night and then conduct what we call a standing head count. Basically, I come in and put eyes on every inmate on the floor. If my roster says I have 170 inmates, I have to physically count 170 inmates. Well, the facility is currently undergoing modernization upgrades. This includes new doors, locks, day space tables/furniture, and most importantly, cameras. On my floor, all pods are full to capacity except for C block. This pod is currently locked out, meaning no inmates are to be housed in the pod until all upgrades are done and in place. They've been working on it for about 3 weeks now. They've put in all the new doors, locks, and cameras. The camera feeds are shown on a small screen inside the control room of the floor with their cell number placed in the bottom right corner of each cell. So I shouldn't have to worry about counting in C block as there are no inmates in C block. Well, 1 week ago, after finishing my head count, I come back to the control room and do my usual routine. Pull up Chrome and just browse the internet until I have to do my hourly check to make sure no one is committing self-die. Around midnight of May 2nd, 23, I finish doing another check and sit down in the control room. As I go to sit down, I take a quick glance at the screen with all the cameras. In C block 4 cell, I swear I saw a person standing in the center of the cell facing outward towards the door of the cell. I do a double take and of course nothing is there. Okay, maybe I saw someone in B block standing in their cell, or the cam froze for a second. NBD. About 30 minutes later, I sit up in my chair as I'm putting my phone down. This time again I see someone standing in C block 4 cell, and this time I know that it's that cell because I'm looking at the number. The cell door is wide open, as are all the doors in C block, so it's for sure that cell. I full tilt sprint into that block and look up into 4 cell. Nothing and no one. I begin to think that I'm seeing things, or the camera is somehow fucking up. I put in a report to our electronic maintenance department. They say they'll look into it. I come back the next night and the report states all wiring is fine, and that the camera feed is in fact linked to C block 4 cell. After going home and thinking about it, I convinced myself that I was wrong somehow, that it was just me being tired. Again, same process comes and goes, lockdown, head count, back to control room to wait. I'm now glancing every once in a while at C block 4 cell, nothing appears. Midnight comes and goes. I think okay, yeah, it was me. NBD. Well then 0200 rolls around, and again I do my check, sit down back in the control room. Again, all the doors in C block are all the way open, and these doors are not light, they are big metal doors, easily 60 to 70 pounds. That's when C block 4 cell slams shut. Then after it is shut and now locked, it sounds like it's starting to be kicked by a horse. Like someone slammed it shut right on the back end of a full-grown horse. I look on the camera screen and all the cameras in that pod are just blinking on and off. I go into the block, and as I'm going up the stairs towards the door, more doors start to shut. From 6 to 5, 3, 2, 1. At this point I'm done. I ran out of that block, shut the door, and called for a supervisor in maintenance. We checked the footage of the event on the supervisor's computer in his office, and of course none of them show anything. At around the 0200 mark, they all just go to no connection with our local server at the HQ building across the street. Maintenance did say that it was defiantly not the lock, but it did look like someone had tried to kick that door off its hinges because the door frame itself had chipped paint after having just freshly been painted. I've scoured incident reports back 5 years and I can't find anything about any violent deaths or just anyone dying in general on this floor. That being said, my department has sealed reports in the past where if you are under an LT you won't be able to read the report. So I'm not sure. I'm still working on this floor. They are on the last few days of fixing up C block and then they'll move to D block. They still have 3 more blocks after D block to do. So I'm a little concerned of what'll happen once those are empty and not in use. Things in C block seem to have calmed down as nothing major has happened since last week. Doors still move and I've had 2 shut, but not like that night a week ago. I've put in for a vacation towards the end of May, so I'm hoping time away is going to help, and hopefully it'll be a fix. But this has turned me from a non-believer to skeptic on the low end to a possible believer on the high end. I just don't think the AC could blow a 60-pound door shut, nor could it cause the door to be hit that violently. If anyone has a similar experience or has any ideas, please let me know. Next story. Abandoned prison. My girlfriend and I often get bored with our hometown, so we travel our state a lot exploring abandoned places. Some of these places are also deemed to be haunted. I'm browsing on my computer one day and I find this prison located about 3 hours from our town. We decide to drive out there on the upcoming 4th of July because we figured no one would be there for the holiday. This prison was very large with 10 or so buildings ranging from cell blocks to indoor workout areas. All of these buildings were surrounded by guard towers and fencing that was impossible to enter without breaking the chain links. We parked behind these trees in the front parking lot and walk up to the main building entrance used for prisoner intake. Lucky for us, the front door simply opened and we could just walk right in. We passed through that building and here we are now inside the prison itself. It's a very open space with sidewalks and courtyards connecting the buildings. However, there were little things that seemed off about the whole place. Dead crows that lined the sidewalks was the most noticeable. It was like they flew over the prison and just fell out of the sky. Even the graffiti was made up of weird symbols that we didn't understand. We passed all that a little on edge now, and as we walked I saw letters on the buildings. A, B, C were regular cell blocks. When we passed B, I thought to myself that we should check it out because B is the first letter of my name. Odd thought to have, but I went with it. The cell blocks formed the shape of a T, and in the middle of the T was a guard station with a ladder leading them to the 2nd floor if they needed to go up there without having to interact with the inmates. This upstairs area connected to a hallway that led to a boiler room and a door with stairs leading down the side of the building. I walked up those stairs and past the boiler room, but I stopped dead in my tracks when I got to this hallway. I shined my phone flashlight into the hallway, and even though it was daytime outside, my light only went 1 inch into this area. I felt myself shiver even though I live in the south and it's 90 degrees out. I asked out loud, if there's anyone here with us, make yourself known. I'm sure this was a mistake, but I didn't mean it negatively, I just felt compelled to say it. From this pitch black darkness I hear a noise that sounded like something scurrying away, such as a small animal. I figure that's all it was that made me nervous when all of a sudden I hear footsteps full on sprinting directly at me. It sounded like whatever it was had massive feet and could run unnaturally fast. I ran out of the building and down the stairs with my girlfriend right in front of me. We both looked at each other and determined that whatever it was, it did not want us here. We did end up walking around just a little more on other parts of the property, but we felt watched the entire time. As we left through the front door we felt better, almost as if we were released from an unpleasant fog of energy. We had sage in the car and burned some, which also helped us feel better. I try not to think about it often, but I do wonder what we encountered. Thanks for joining us on this spine-tingling journey into the unknown. Whether you're a skeptic or a true believer, we hope our exploration has left you with more questions than answers and a sense of wonder about the mysteries that surround us. If you enjoyed this eerie adventure, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit the notification bell so you won't miss any of our future explorations into the paranormal. Share your thoughts and experiences in the comments below. Your stories might just be the next to inspire our investigations. Until next time, keep your lights on and your mind open. Stay curious and stay safe.